Twilla Case. We are so excited to have you here. Again, this is the Sales Docket. Steve Rapp, Tim Garner, interviewing one of our dear friends, Twilla Case. Twilla, thank you so much for joining us. Couldn't be happy to have you. We've known each other for quite a bit, and you've had a really interesting career. So, as we always do, is kick off the Sales Docket with your origin story, and we'd love to hear a little bit about you, where you are now, how you got there, and then we'll dive into some additional questions. But awesome to have you, Twila.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be talking with y'all. My origin story, where do I start is a good question. I think when we talk about my origin story, I would have to say my childhood was a good primer for where I am now, in that I was middle child, oldest girl of 7 kids. So there
Wow.
was a lot of fighting in my house, a lot of testosterone, learning how to navigate that. There were just 2 girls, right? And my mom was a single mom. So that prepped me for a lot of stuff along the way. Started in management, of course, kind of like you guys, done some management, but had a roommate in, I don't know, I was probably 24, 25, and she was in sales, and she left one of her commission checks on the table one day. And I'm like, oh no. Oh no.
Oh,
And that was
yes.
one of my, oh yeah. One of my biggest pivots. I transformational moments, right? I'm like, oh my God, she's making that much money. So I did some thinking, found myself a recruiter, and made my way into sales. My first sales job in the legal industry, I was in financial printing. So we were focused on companies that were going public. And that's where I learned account mapping, even though I didn't know it was called account mapping at that time. It was like, they're going public. I need to get to know their accountants, their law firms, their VCs, their private equity, anybody that touched that deal. I actually had to start having conversations with them and figure out what was going on, when they were going to go public. So from there, the company was in public, and then I would start reading their 10Ks. So learn to read the letter to the shareholders from the CEO, look at item 3 in the 10K, figure out what what was being shared with the street, and just doing a bunch of research. From there, I made my way to Merrill, where I think I met the both of you.
Yeah.
And I moved over into eDiscovery. Yeah, it was national accounts at that time. So I still continued my sales trajectory, focused on enterprise and the corporation, but still focused on general counsel and still doing a lot of that account mapping that I didn't even know what it was. But it was just common sense to get to know God and everybody that was going to be in the room. Yeah. So where am I now? I am at Bay. I had a little entrepreneurial stint where I had my own company for a bit. Let me tell you, woo, you learn a lot there. I know you both do too. So yeah, and here I am. I'm head of data mining at Bay now, which means it's a culmination of everything I've done in my career thus far. So I have revenue targets that I have to meet. I have P&L responsibility. I'm managing a team, managing service delivery to the market for data breach. So yeah, it's a culmination. It's good.
Nice.
Excellent.
Nice.
Well, that's.
Do you want
that's a
go ahead,
background.
Rap, comment? Because
Go ahead, Jimmy G.
I have a question that I want to get into kind of right away. The whole point, and so TC, Twilla Case, so good to see you. I've
You too,
always
Tim.
considered you just one of the best, and I think having you on, a lot of people can learn, and that's the whole point of the Sales Docket, is to share these experiences with the younger group. And when I see myself a lot of times in my professional careers, when I walk in the room, I'm usually one of one. There may be one of two, right? I'm sure you probably have similar experiences. So my question is, what habits and routines have helped you stay resilient and confident in a field where you're often the only woman in the room?
Um, Wow. I have to say, being the only woman in the room, sometimes it's noticeable and sometimes it's not. But I've always been okay with kind of, I guess, needing to take a back seat. And then when I need to say something, making sure that it's of value. I don't just necessarily talk to hear my own voice. That gets annoying. But typically it's kind of a showstopper when I do decide to say something. I think the expectation is that I have blonde hair and blue eyes and I'm not that smart. And I have a Southern accent. And I'm like, oh yeah, let me show you. So that little chip on my shoulder, it's a pro and a con. But it's softened over time. But I think, Tim, kind of like you, it's just part of it.
Right, right. And I think successful salespeople or successful people in general are good listeners, right? And you're able to see the field and understand where you stand and when it's a great opportunity or the optimal opportunity for you to speak. And I love your answer, so thank you. Rapp, I'll pass it over to you.
No, that's great stuff. I mean, I love all of this right now, and I think Twila, I think Tim and I clearly have been super impressed by you throughout these years and your impact on especially where your career's gone. I think you've taken some risks in your day too, and I think that's really interesting because I don't know if a lot of people take risks the way you've done it, but it's also foreshadowing of what you're seeing. And I think again, transformation. I've seen you transform quite a bit, right? I mean, you've gone into cyber, you've gone and started your own company. If you're a younger person today, like, and they're starting their career, what are the signals that you saw? What are the things that you pick up on? Like, where did these choices from change come from? Right? I mean, I think I try to see the tea leaves, right? Clearly in the industry and try to make moves based on that. And you've done that throughout your career. Where does that come from? And what do you look for? Like, if you had to tell a younger Twilla Case today, here are the things to keep an eye out as you're marching along your career. What do you look for?
For me, I read a lot. And that's probably, it's incredibly influential in the way I make decisions. I also get bored. So my move into cyber, moving into e-discovery was huge for me. And, I've met amazing people, and that's where I met the two of you as well. But it was 2016 when I started my move into cyber. So that was really early. And at that point, still doing e-discovery sales, and like all salespeople do, I had to submit a business plan on how it's going to hit that astronomical number that year. And I submitted a cyber plan. Nobody in the company had done cyber. I just wanted to do it. They accepted my business plan. And I think, I don't know if they expected me to do what I did, but within 3 months, I landed $1 million consulting engagement. We had no consultants, nobody to support that engagement. It was, but we did it super successfully. We got some people on the information security team and they supported it. They loved it. It became client facing. There were some things going on in the company at that time. It was acquired, so it wasn't where their focus was. But cyber has been interesting to me for a very long time, and there's so many facets to it that you can't get bored in cyber. Seriously.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let me ask another question. So looking back on your early career mistakes and misconceptions, talk to you about, becoming a trusted advisor rather than a salesperson. What were some of the things that you learned early on to say, I probably shouldn't go that route. Let me go this route. And as you continue to mature and develop, what were some of those early things that helped you become a consultant as opposed to a salesperson?
Good question, Tim Garner.
I love it. Well, I've done software sales as well as services sales, right? And those you approach them very differently. But I'm kind of I'm a techie sort of person. I've never done development. Let me just clarify that. Never built anything like that. But I'd love to dig in and understand how things work. So mistakes, good God, there's so many. Where do I start? I think the biggest thing is starting out in sales was that everybody was going to want what I was offering. And that just isn't true. For starters, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And that realization was hard. That in and of itself. And then knowing just because you do litigation and e-discovery doesn't mean you need my version of what we're selling, right? Or what I'm offering you. So, that whole like define your target market and who this is. And I'm like, all these litigation attorneys, they need e-discovery, they need blah, 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 but they didn't always need it from me. So that was a huge revelation. And then learning, I'm not just competing with the other companies that are doing what I'm doing. I'm really competing with status quo. It's the way I'm doing things today, right? Or the way somebody else is doing things today. And then I continue to have to take looks in the mirror at like, what do I dislike about when somebody's selling something to me? And it goes back to human psychology versus this is an attorney, this is a CFO, this is a fill in the blank, a consumer. So trying to look into that more deeply and say, how do I make decisions when I'm buying something versus let me sell you something. So just, learning, you got to be constantly learning and have some self-awareness, I think. Yeah.
That's interesting. And Twilla, just for the audience, selling mostly to corporations, law firms,
Yes.
where do you spend most of your time?
I would say up until more recently, it has always been into corporations and then, doing MSA and longer term engagements and relationships, and then gathering all of the litigation and those relationships with outside counsel and law firms that way. That was one of the biggest mistakes I learned though, Tim, is that I was a well hunter. And I guess in sports terms, I needed to be hitting those, what do you call it, first base hits,
singles.
line
hit
hits.
some singles. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hit some
Thank you.
singles.
You can tell I follow sports, don't I? Yeah. So at some point, I was well hunting and I was well on my way. I'd done an international trip to this company's home office 2 different times. And we were in the 11th hour, 59th minute and 59th second, and they made a directional change. And I lost, at that point in time, a career defining sell. And it just totally knocked the wind out of me. So I gave myself 24 hours to like get over that. And that's, I told myself, you can cry, you can be upset, you can point fingers for 24 hours, and then you got to be done. You got to pick up and move on. I almost got laid off as a result of that because I was just well hunting. And then lucky me, one of my other client corporations hit at that point in time, then, smooth sailing. But Tim, I think that's really important that we all learn that resilience. So you're going to get knocked down. You got to pick yourself back up really quickly.
Yeah.
I love that. So one of the 2 things you said. One, you said the 24-hour window, right? You gave yourself 24 hours to grieve, to go through it.
Yeah.
But you still got to pick yourself up and get it moving, right? So that's important. As a golfer, we say that after the next hole, where you like miss a 2-footer, you're going to the next hole complaining like what, and then you got to let it go, because that's life.
Totally.
Because in life, you can't get too high, you can't get too low, because it all will pass, right?
Yeah.
And what you talked about, you almost lost your job, and then you were lucky. You created that luck, right? That you created that luck for that next project to come in at the timing when you need it. So I love the resilience thing and holding yourself accountable about, all right, I'm going to grieve for 24 hours and then I'm going to get back on the horse. So that's important. Thanks for sharing that. That's awesome.
But it was super memorable, right?
Is one of the most underrated sales pieces that you need to have. It's like the Ted Lasso goldfish rule, right? I mean, you got to forget what just happened to you.
Yes.
I mean, this is an industry of more no's than yeses, at least in my career, right? I mean, that's just the reality. And if you don't have that resilience and understand it's probably not personal, right? It's just, you don't know what's happening in that other person's life. You don't know. I mean, resilience is key. I did have a question for you, because I think you've said a couple of things, and I think this is pretty interesting. So you started out being taught a pretty interesting skill, it sounds like, around account mapping and research. And I think that's really interesting, because in a corporation, you have typically a committee. It's just, if you hook yourself on one person, might be the right person, but if he leaves in 6 months, you spent all that time and effort developing one relationship without spreading it across. So when you do this, is there a methodology that you look at? Is there a technique that you look at? Is there any prep work that you do before kind of meeting with a high value client? How do you spread across from your champion into other areas to really lock down that corporate deal? Because I think corporations are a different beast, right?
Okay.
Anything you can share, insights that you can share to the next generation on that? We don't need all your good sales tidbits, but a couple would
No,
be great.
I am
Yes,
more
we
than
do.
happy to
We want them
share.
all.
Yeah, yeah. I'm more than happy to share because at the end of the day, I think it's execution and implementation, and follow through. Again, I'm a reader, so I love researching and this whole consensus building thing. For me, I love business. So when you're selling into a corporation, you have to understand things about the business. And that's why I read the annual report. Believe me, I don't read every page. I go for the highlights. I read the CEO's letter to the shareholders. I read item 3 for litigation investigations. I'm looking at some of their financials. I'm looking at initiatives. Are they going into new markets? What litigation are they reporting to the street? Is the material impact on their business? 8Ks, those sorts of things. And then, try to ensure that I understand the lay of the land internally. Legal, once upon a time, it was a cost center. So we approached talking about cost savings, cost savings, cost savings. Now they have to be a value generator as well, right? So understanding that we actually do need to help them achieve things that are going to say, I'm bringing value to the business, not just cutting cost, is huge. And it goes back to understanding the business initiative. Lucky for me, I sold e-discovery, legal operations consulting, staffing, IP, contracts management. So, I know legal. um, are there going to be things I don't know? Of course, thank God, because it keeps me learning. But back to that curiosity, I'm like, ooh, how does this work? Or when somebody tells me that hasn't been done before, I'm like, okay, I'm going to give it a whirl. And lucky for me, a lot of times, that kind of works out in my favor, because I can connect dots and I am pulling that thread to make sure that things are there's a flow. And when you understand that all things eventually roll up to the CFO and finances, in a larger corporation, procurement gets involved. You have to do those security assessments and they have budgets, and then understanding to some degree how they're bonused and how they're compensated. I kind of get into the weeds, so I and then you can have a different conversation with people. It's not like, let me show you this capability of my platform. Sorry, but
No,
it's just a different conversation.
I should have been taking notes. I just learned a couple things. Thank you.
So not only teaching the new generation, but teaching us old dogs.
Yeah, the old
Charlie,
heads.
we'll
Yeah,
talk
I just caught
afterwards.
some. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna have to
Hey, I learn
listen to
from
our
everybody
podcast.
around me. That's the whole idea, is just walking into the room and listening, right? And learning. People they start talking. I pick up stuff all the time from people around me. And it's not just people in the legal industry. I accept sales calls all the time. I just want to hear how somebody's going to pitch me, whether it be a mortgage. Good God, how many of those calls do we all get, right? But I'm like, how did I feel on the other end of that call? And then I actually will tell the person, I'm not your target market. I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be respectful of your quota. So, just take me off your list because I don't want to waste your time. So, just that whole treat others the way you want to be treated thing is really, it's true.
Yeah, I love that. I do the same thing when I run into salespeople, I'll give them time because I know what it's like, to have doors shut. I used to, sell copiers door to door. So a lot of doors shut in your face. So when I get calls, I'll usually talk to them. I'll let them
Yeah.
know, and the same thing. Hey, I'm not your target market, but maybe you might want to try this or read this or do this. It's great. It's always an opportunity to teach. So that's great stuff.
Yeah.
Good stuff. How we doing on time, Rapper?
We're doing
What's
fine.
up?
We got about 5 minutes left, which is perfect. You got another question?
I do.
All right.
So one piece of advice
Oh,
that you would give the sales docket, group about building long-term relationships. What is the one piece? I know you talked about reading and you know, obviously being up on the things that are going on, but if you could give one piece of advice, just one, what would it be?
Pay attention to human psychology. That
Okay,
it you
I
know,
love it.
and that's foundational. We all buy the
Yeah,
same way. And if you know, back to reading and learning, the science of this is that we're all emotional buyers. We're doing what our emotions and our feelings tell us to do, and then we rationalize with all the other facts and figures and statistics and all the stuff around us. So it's like, how am I feeling in this conversation? Am I being resistant? Whatever that is, you know, back to self-awareness and how we're feeling about things. So really pay attention to human psychology.
And is that
love that.
so?
Love that.
Question for that. You do a lot of research. Was there a sales book, or is there a sales book that you sat there and said, "Holy, like I didn't think of it this way," or "This has changed the way I approach things"? Because I mean, we've all read a bunch of them, but is there anyone that was truly impactful for you? Because I don't know if it's next generation's readers, but I do, and you know, we've always read, and reading and researching and all of that is part of this. Was there one sales book that just kind of opened your eyes to the selling process that helped you?
I've taken so much from so many books, but I
Mm.
think what kind of brought it together for me was the challenge yourself.
Mm.
Yes,
I don't
I
remember
have
the
that.
authors of that, but it was the challenge yourself.
Okay,
I have
I
that book
love it.
here. I don't. Yeah, I have that. Yeah, it's an
Have you
excellent
read
book.
it?
I started. I got a lot of books open, a lot of stuff, you know. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other thing now is, you know, a little bit more advantageous to a younger generation. Are we really saying that about people now? Are we that old? It's podcasts.
yeah,
You know, you can
Yeah.
listen in the car. I mean, once upon a time, maybe it was books on tape, but I didn't enjoy that
yeah,
nearly as much. But you know, you guys probably may have seen on LinkedIn. I follow Diary of a CEO and Steve Bartlett. Oh my
Mm.
God, this man can
Right.
ask the most amazing questions, and the way he listens, and I'm like, I want to be that good. So you know, just learning from wherever I can learn from, but just trying to incorporate it into the way I do things. Really, I
Mm.
learned so much from you guys too. I mean, yeah, I learned from you guys, so thank you. Even being here, such an honor. Thank you.
Couldn't be happier.
oh,
I think
yeah.
we could. Yeah, look, I think Twilight, this has been this is amazing. Seriously, I love, no, I love your approach on things. And I think, you know, I think subconsciously we typically, I mean, I try to learn from every sales call. And if there's some little tidbit I can use and build a story around, right? So learning becomes fundamental
Yeah.
to all of our success. So we have one question. I'm going to let Timmy G ask it if you have it in front of you. If not, I'll ask it. But it's kind of the last question we ask on our podcast because it's an interesting one. Timmy, you want to?
It's you can ask it, but here's the one thing I have to bring this up because when I think of Twilla Case, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the Graham Norton show.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
It's a
yes.
UK show. So Jamie Foxx was on the Graham Norton show, and if you see this, and everybody on the Sales Docket should check this out because it's pretty funny. But he's talking about how he was doing that movie with Tom Cruise, and he had to do a reading, and you know he didn't get the one with Cuba Gooding Jr. because he was too loud, and Tom Cruise was talking so low, and the director was like, "We want to sign you up for a movie to work with TC." With TC, and he was like, "TC, who's TC?" And it was Tom Cruise. So every time I hear Twilla Case, I think TC, like knowing that you're not Tom Cruise, but I had to add that in. But go ahead, Rap. Ask the question. Is it about the pivot?
Yeah. So
Go
if
ahead.
you
Go
look
ahead.
at,
I'll let you do.
yep, perfect. If you look at all your past experiences, right? Was there or what single event changed the trajectory of your career? And what caused the pivot? And what lesson would you share with the next generation of listeners on the Sales Docket? Oof.
So many. But again, I think going back to the story that I shared a little bit earlier about seeing my roommate's pay stub,
I love
that
that.
that that that's like, oh my God, nobody can tell me how much to make anymore. It really is about what do I want to do here? And then you know, from that, at some point, somebody taught me how to work backwards into my numbers. How much do I
Mm.
want to make? What is my average size deal? working, how many blah, 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 blah. And it gets down, how many calls do I need to make? How many meetings? So rather than somebody telling me, you need to do 50 meetings this week, I know that's an exaggeration. We all do. But I knew what I needed to do. And then knowing that I'm not really competing with anybody else, I'm competing with myself saying, I don't want to do this today. And it's like, what choice do you have? Either you want it or you don't. So,
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Well, TC, as Tim Garner would call, as TG would call you,
yeah,
it is such a pleasure. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is something new for us. We're learning as we go, so we couldn't appreciate the fact that you've been on our show, that you are an incredible impact on this. I mean, really, from a mentorship standpoint, anybody who has a chance to hear this, I think they'll learn a lot from you. And we really appreciate your time.
Thank you guys. It's been fun. I love y'all.
Yeah, Twilla, you know I've always been a fan. We tried to work when you were doing the cyber stuff. So the data mining stuff, we should chat anyway to see if there's a way that, you know, there's some people that I know that maybe I can get you in front of it, and vice versa. We'll continue to support one another. Big fan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Always.
Awesome.
Always.
I'm going to stop recording.